A new chapter, BHINS. The morning sun painted golden streaks across Natalie Brooks's bedroom ceiling as she stood before her full-length mirror, smoothing down the fabric of her flowing peacock blue coat. 7 months. 7 months since Derek Thornton had walked out of their brownstone apartment with nothing but a suitcase and words so cutting they still occasionally woke her in the middle of the night. 7 months since he had looked her in the eyes and told her she was incomplete, inadequate, a failure as a wife because her body refused to cooperate with his family's timeline. She placed both hands protectively over the swell of her abdomen, feeling the gentle flutter of life beneath her palms. Her daughter, whom she had already named Grace, was active this morning, as if sensing the importance of the day ahead. Natalie had discovered the pregnancy 8 weeks after Derek left, standing in the bathroom of this very apartment, staring at 2 pink lines that seemed to mock every cruel word her husband had ever spoken. The wounds still effervescent. Memory of their final argument remained vivid and painful. It had been a rainy March evening when Derek returned from his father's estate in Connecticut. Natalie had prepared his favorite meal, hoping to discuss yet another fertility treatment option Dr. Richardson had mentioned. Instead, Derek had poured himself whiskey and delivered the verdict their marriage had apparently been awaiting. His words echoed through her memory as she applied minimal makeup. "Natalie, this isn't working. We've spent 4 years trying, and the reality is clear. My family needs an heir, and you cannot provide one. Perhaps we should both accept that continuing this marriage is pointless." She had pleaded, suggested adoption, surrogacy, anything to save what they had built together. But Derek had been resolute, his grey eyes cold and distant. "I want my own child, my own legacy. The Thornton name deserves better than what you can offer." Within 3 weeks, he had moved out. Within 6 weeks, photographs of Derek with Victoria Hart had surfaced on social media. The 24-year-old lifestyle influencer was everything Natalie supposedly was not: carefree, bubbly, and, as Derek had made painfully clear through mutual friends, capable of giving him what he needs. Gathering STRNGTH. Natalie's phone buzzed with a text from her sister Claire. "You've got this, Nat. Remember, you're not the broken woman he left behind. You're a warrior carrying a miracle. Call me after." She smiled, grateful for Claire's unwavering support through the darkest months. When Natalie had broken down, sobbing in Claire's kitchen, convinced Derek was right about her being defective, Claire had held her and insisted she see Dr. Richardson, a fertility specialist known for her innovative approaches and compassionate care. Dr. Richardson had run different tests, examined Natalie's medical history with fresh eyes, and discovered that previous treatments had been too aggressive for her specific condition. With a gentler protocol and some patience, conception was possible. 2 months later, Natalie had called Claire from that same bathroom, crying tears of joy and disbelief. The law, OFFICE Sterling and Associates, occupied the 15th floor of a gleaming downtown skyscraper. As Natalie stepped from the elevator into the reception area, her heels clicking against polished marble, she felt her heartbeat accelerate. She had rehearsed this moment countless times, but theory and reality were vastly different. Jessica Park, her attorney, met her near the entrance. Jessica was a formidable presence in the legal world, known for her fierce advocacy for women navigating difficult divorces. She had immediately understood Natalie's situation and had crafted a settlement that protected her interests without revealing her pregnancy. "He's already here," Jessica said quietly, studying Natalie's face. "Are you absolutely certain you want to do this today? We can postpone if you need more time." Natalie shook her head firmly. "No, today is the day. I need to close this chapter." Jessica nodded approvingly. "Remember what we discussed. Stay calm, don't let him provoke you, and trust the process. You hold all the power here, even if he doesn't realize it yet." Facing the PASD conference room, B was elegant and intimidating. With its floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic city views, Derek sat at the far end of an enormous glass table, flanked by 2 attorneys in expensive suits. At 35, he remained striking in the way wealth and privilege preserved. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his navy suit tailored to perfection, his posture radiating the confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way. When Natalie entered, something flickered across his features. Surprise, certainly. She looked different from the broken woman he had abandoned. Her chestnut hair fell in healthy waves. Her skin glowed with vitality, and despite the concealing coat, there was strength in her bearing that had been absent during their final toxic months together. "Natalie," Derek said, his voice carrying that familiar, authoritative tone, "thank you for being punctual. Shall we proceed efficiently?" She took her seat across from him without responding, Jessica settling beside her with a reassuring presence. Derek's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Gregory Walsh, began reviewing the settlement terms. The beach house would go to Derek. The investment accounts would be divided. According to the prenuptial agreement Derek's father had insisted upon, Natalie would receive the downtown loft they had purchased as a rental property, plus a fair financial settlement. Throughout the review, Natalie remained quiet, her hands folded on the table. She had agreed to everything weeks ago, wanting nothing that would tie her to Derek beyond what was absolutely necessary. Let him keep his penthouse and his new life with Victoria. She needed only enough to build her own future. To provide for Grace. The weight of CHOICESA's, Gregory slid documents across the table. Derek leaned back in his leather chair, studying Natalie with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. He had always been possessive, even when he was actively destroying their marriage. "You look different," he observed, interrupting Gregory mid. "Healthier? Are you seeing someone?" The question hung in the air, inappropriate and loaded with implications. Jessica stiffened beside Natalie, ready to intervene, but Natalie simply met Derek's gaze steadily. "My personal life is no longer your concern," she said calmly. Derek's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. Jessica pushed the final documents toward Natalie. "All that remains is your signature. Then you'll be free to move forward with your life." Natalie reached for the elegant pen Jessica offered, leaning forward to sign her name on the designated line. As she did, the peacock blue coat, which had been carefully positioned to conceal, shifted slightly. The fabric fell open just enough to reveal the unmistakable curve of her belly. 7 months of precious life she had nurtured in secret. The pen Derek had been holding clattered against the glass table, the sound impossibly loud in the suddenly silent room. The truth emerg's face drained of all color, his eyes fixed on the curve of Natalie's abdomen, as if he were seeing something impossible, something that defied every certainty he had built his decisions upon. His attorneys exchanged confused glances, uncertain what had caused their normally composed client to freeze completely. Jessica, who knew exactly what was happening, watched with quiet satisfaction, her expression carefully neutral. "What?" Derek whispered, his voice strangled and barely audible. "What is that?" Natalie straightened in her chair, letting the coat fall away completely. There was no point in hiding anymore. This moment, this revelation, was precisely why she had chosen to come today, rather than handling everything through attorneys. She wanted Derek to see, to understand, to feel the weight of everything he had thrown away. Her hand moved protectively to her belly, to the miracle he had convinced her she was incapable of creating. "I'm pregnant," she said simply, her voice steady and clear. 7 months along, the words hit Derek like a physical blow. He stood so abruptly that his chair scraped violently against the floor, the harsh sound echoing through the conference room. His perfectly composed facade shattered into 1,000 pieces, revealing raw shock underneath. "That's impossible," he stammered, gripping the edge of the table as if needing support. "You couldn't conceive. We tried for 4 years. Every specialist said the chances were nearly impossible. The doctors told us repeatedly." Reclaiming her narrative, the doctors said there was a small chance. Natalie interrupted, her voice gaining strength with each word. "They never said impossible. You were the one who decided I was broken. You were the one who called me inadequate and incomplete. You were the one who looked me in the eyes and told me I had failed as a wife because my body wouldn't cooperate with your timeline." The words landed like accusations, because that was exactly what they were. Natalie watched memories play across Derek's features, painful recollections of fights that had grown increasingly vicious, of accusations that cut deeper each time. Of the night, he had finally said the words that destroyed their marriage beyond repair. Gregory. Walsh cleared his throat uncomfortably. Perhaps we should take a brief recess to allow everyone to process this development. No, Natalie said firmly. We're finishing this today. Derek sank back into his chair, his hands trembling visibly. How? He asked, his voice cracking. When did this happen? 2 months after you left, Natalie explained, maintaining her composure despite the emotions swirling beneath the surface. My sister Claire insisted. I see Dr. Amelia Richardson, a specialist with a different approach. Dr. Richardson ran new tests, discovered that previous treatments had been too aggressive for my specific situation, and tried a gentler protocol. She paused, letting the words sink in. It worked, Derek. I conceived naturally. The thing you declared impossible happened. The weight of REJ Eritech's lead attorney leaned over to whisper something, but Derek waved him away dismissively, his eyes never leaving Natalie's face. The man who made million-dollar decisions without hesitation couldn't seem to process this single piece of information. Why didn't you tell me? His voice held a note of desperation. When you found out, why didn't you contact me? Natalie's laugh was short and bitter. Tell you. The man who abandoned me because I couldn't give him children. The man who moved his girlfriend into our home before our bed was even cold. The man who told our friends I was defective. Why would I tell you anything, Derek? Because it's my child, Derek said, his voice rising with emotion he rarely displayed. The timing, the conception, it has to be mine. Biologically, yes, Natalie acknowledged. But this child is mine. Mine alone. You made it very clear you wanted nothing to do with a broken, inadequate wife. So, I'm giving you exactly what you wanted, Derek. Your freedom, your divorce. Your chance to build the perfect life with someone who isn't me. Memories of PIN, the memory of Derek's cruelest moment, surfaced unbidden. It had been a freezing February night, snow piling against their windows. They had just returned from yet another fertility appointment. Another round of disappointing news. Derek had poured whiskey, his third glass of the evening, and turned to face her with eyes that held nothing but cold calculation. My father is right, he had said, his words deliberate and cutting. The Thornton legacy needs an heir, and you clearly cannot provide one. Maybe it's time we both accept this marriage was a mistake. You're incomplete, Natalie. Fundamentally flawed. Those words, incomplete and flawed, had echoed through her darkest nights. Even now, carrying living proof of his error, those words still possessed the power to sting. But she had learned something crucial during these 7 months. His words revealed his limitations, not hers. Derek stood again, running his hands through his perfectly styled hair, destroying the careful arrangement. Natalie, wait. We need to discuss this. We need to figure out what this means for us. There is no us, Natalie said firmly. There hasn't been an us since you walked out that door. The desperate plea, please, Derek said. And Natalie heard something she had never heard from him before. Genuine vulnerability. Just give me a chance to explain. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Jessica placed a hand on Natalie's arm, a silent question. Every instinct, as her attorney probably screamed to refuse, to maintain distance, to protect her client from further manipulation. But Natalie found herself nodding. 5 minutes, she agreed. Then, I'm leaving. The attorneys filed out, leaving them alone in the vast conference room. Derek moved to the windows, his back to her, shoulders tense. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I made the worst mistake of my life, he said. Walking away from you, from us, from everything we built together. I've known it for months, Natalie. I've known it every single day since you left. Derek, Natalie started, but he turned around, his eyes pleading. Please, let me finish. I've been rehearsing this for months. I just never imagined I'd be saying it like this. With you pregnant, carrying our child. He moved closer, but maintained a respectful distance. When you left, I convinced myself I was relieved. I told myself that Victoria was exactly what I needed. Someone younger, someone uncomplicated, Someone who could give me children, easily, without years of struggle and heartbreak. I threw myself into that relationship like it was a business acquisition, trying to make it work through sheer determination. The illusion shatters. I don't need to hear about your new relationship, Natalie said quietly, but Derek shook his head urgently. You do need to hear this, he insisted. Because it's falling apart, Natalie. It has been for months. Because she's not you, because every single day, I'm reminded of what I threw away. Victoria doesn't understand my work, doesn't challenge me when I'm being unreasonable, doesn't know how I take my coffee, or that I need the window open at night to sleep. All those little things I took for granted, they matter. They matter so much. He ran his hand through his hair again, a gesture of frustration Natalie recognized from their years together. 3 weeks ago, Victoria told me she's not even sure she wants children. Can you imagine the irony? I destroyed my marriage because you struggled to conceive, and I replaced you with someone who doesn't even want kids. Natalie felt a complicated mixture of emotions. There was a touch of satisfaction, she had to admit, but mostly just profound sadness for the unnecessary pain they had both endured. But more than that, Derek continued, his voice breaking. I miss you. Every single day. I miss the way you'd hum while painting. I miss your terrible jokes. I miss the way you'd challenge me to be better. You made me better, Natalie, and I was too blind and too focused on some imaginary future to appreciate the present I had. He took another step closer, and Natalie instinctively placed a protective hand on her belly. His eyes followed the movement, filling with tears. And now you're carrying a baby. The baby we wanted for so long. The baby I told you was impossible. And I threw away my chance to be part of that miracle because I was cruel and impatient and let my father's expectations matter more than your heart. Tears were streaming down Derek's face now. Genuine emotion that Natalie had rarely witnessed during their marriage. Derek Thornton, who prided himself on control and composure, was falling apart before her eyes. I don't expect forgiveness, he said hoarsely. I don't even deserve to ask. But please, Natalie, give me a chance to make this right. Let me be part of our child's life. Let me prove I can be the man you needed all along. Finding her voice, Natalie stood slowly, her hands cradling her belly protectively. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city sprawling below. Thousands of lives intersecting and diverging, each person carrying their own stories of triumph and heartbreak. She had spent so many years trying to fit into Derek's world, trying to become the perfect wife for a man who saw her only as a means to an end. It had taken his abandonment for her to finally understand a profound truth. She had never been the problem. Do you know what I've named her? Natalie asked quietly, not turning round. Derek's breath caught audibly. Her Grace, Natalie said softly. Grace Elizabeth Brooks, because she represents grace for me. Grace, that I'm stronger than I believed. Grace, that I'm not broken. Grace that the life ahead of me can be filled with people who value me for who I am, not what I can provide them. That's beautiful, Derek whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Confronting the past, Natalie turned to face him, and Derek saw something in her eyes that made him step back. Not anger, not hatred, but something more powerful, clarity and resolve. You destroyed me, Derek, she said, her voice steady but filled with pain that had taken months to process. You took the woman who loved you unconditionally, who supported your every ambition, who stood beside you through everything, and you systematically broke her down until she believed she was worthless. And then, when I needed you most, when I was already drowning in feelings of inadequacy, you abandoned me. I know, Derek said desperately. I know, and I'm sorry. God, Natalie, I'm so sorry. I'm not finished, Natalie said firmly, raising her hand. These past 7 months have been the hardest of my life. There were nights I cried until I couldn't breathe, days when I couldn't get out of bed, moments when I believed every cruel thing you ever said about me. But they've also been the most important months of my life. She moved past him toward the conference table, gathering her things with deliberate calm. I learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew. I learned that I deserve better than someone who only values me for what I can produce. I learned that I can build a beautiful, meaningful life without you, and most importantly, I learned that your opinion of me was never the truth. It was just your limitation. Setting boundary, Isteric reached out as if to touch her arm, then thought better of it. What about Grace? What about our daughter? Please, Natalie, don't shut me out of her life because of my mistakes. Natalie paused, considering her words carefully. This wasn't just about her anymore. Grace deserved a father who would show up, who would be present, who would love her unconditionally. Grace will know who her father is, Natalie said finally. When she's old enough to understand, I'll tell her the truth. All of it. The good parts of our marriage, and the painful parts too. I won't poison her against you, Derek, because that would only hurt her. Hope flickered across Derek's features, but Natalie held up her hand. However, if you want to be part of her life, you're going to have to prove yourself worthy of that privilege. Not to me, but to her. You're going to have to show up consistently and without conditions. You're going to have to love her, even when it's inconvenient. Even when she doesn't fit into your perfect plans. Even when being a father is hard and complicated and messy. Actions over WODS. Derek nodded frantically. I will, I promise. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll be there for every appointment, every milestone, everything. Just please, give me that chance. Words are easy, Derek, Natalie said softly, echoing the wisdom Jessica had shared months ago. You've always been eloquent. It's the follow-through where you failed me. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to walk out of here today and focus on preparing for my daughter's arrival. I have a nursery to finish, parenting classes to attend, a life to build. She picked up her bag, slinging it over her shoulder. And you have work to do on yourself. Real work. Not just regret and pretty apologies, but actual change. You need to figure out why you treated me the way you did. Why your father's approval mattered more than your wife's well-being. Why you valued legacy over love. Can I call you? Derek asked desperately. Can we at least stay in communication? I want to be involved from the beginning. The path forward. Natalie pulled out her phone and typed something quickly. I just sent you Jessica's contact information. She coordinated everything legally regarding parental rights and responsibilities. If you're serious about being involved, that's where you start. You prove you're committed by showing up to every requirement. Every co-parenting class, every legal appointment we schedule. She moved toward the door, her hand on the handle. You prove it through actions, Derek, not promises. Natalie, Derek called out, his voice cracking with emotion. I love you. I never stopped loving you. She turned back one final time, her eyes soft but unwavering. Maybe you did love me in your way, Derek, but you didn't know how to value me. And love, without value, without respect, without partnership, is just pretty words wrapped around selfish intentions. I need more than that now. Grace needs more than that. I'll do better, he promised, tears streaming down his face. I swear to you, I'll be better. Then do it, Natalie said simply. Don't tell me. Don't promise me. Show Grace. Show up for her the way you never showed up for me. Become the father she deserves, not because it gives you redemption, but because she's worthy of unconditional love. Stepping into Efered. Jessica was waiting in the corridor, a knowing expression on her face. Together, they walked toward the elevators, their heels clicking in synchronized rhythm against the polished floor. As the elevator doors slid closed, Natalie caught one last glimpse of Derek standing in the conference room doorway, a broken man surrounded by the wreckage of his own choices. The elevator descended smoothly, and with each floor, Natalie felt lighter. The weight she had been carrying for months, perhaps years, seemed to lift with every number that ticked past. By the time they reached the lobby, she was actually smiling. How do you feel? Jessica asked, studying her client with professional satisfaction and personal warmth. Free, Natalie said, one hand on her belly where Grace was moving gently, responding to her mother's elevated heart rate. For the first time in years, I feel completely and utterly free. They stepped out into the late afternoon sunshine. The city bustled around them, full of possibility and promise. Somewhere 15 floors above, Derek was probably still standing in that conference room, finally understanding what he had lost. But that was his journey now, his burden to carry, his lessons to learn. Embracing the Efuturine had her own path ahead. She had a daughter to prepare for, dreams to pursue that had been dormant for too long, a career in art curation she had abandoned to support Derek's ambitions. She had discovered her own strength in the ruins of her marriage, and she wasn't going to waste a single moment of it. As she climbed into Jessica's car, her phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "How did it go? Need me to come over? I have ice cream and baby name books." Natalie typed back quickly, her smile widening. "It's done. I'm free, and I'm okay. Better than okay. Come over tonight. Let's celebrate new beginnings." She looked down at her belly, at the visible proof of her resilience, at Grace's miraculous existence. Whatever complicated co-parenting arrangement she might eventually navigate with Derek, whatever challenges lay ahead, one thing was absolutely certain. She was no longer the broken woman he had left behind. She was Grace's mother, strong and capable and whole. She was an artist, a survivor, a woman who had walked through fire and emerged transformed. And that was more than enough. That was everything. The car pulled away from the law office, carrying Natalie toward her future. Behind her, Derek stood at the conference room window, watching until she disappeared into the flow of city traffic. Finally, understanding that sometimes the greatest loss comes from not recognizing the greatest treasure when it's right in front of you. But that realization had come 7 months too late, and some broken things, once shattered by cruelty and neglect, can never be put back together the same way again. They can only be rebuilt into something new, something stronger, something that knows its own worth. Natalie was that something new, and her story, her real story, was only just beginning.